I am Vinnie Tortorich, and folks, your good intentions have been stolen, but don't worry. I'm here to help you get them back. You may be soft and succulent when we start this process, but hang in there. Before long, you will be lean and mean, guaranteed. It's the Friday show. You know what that means. This is the one where we bring in someone who's way more knowledgeable than me. These are the smart guys. They come in every Friday. Everyone loves this show. I've been seeing this guy on Twitter for a couple of good years, 2 or 3 years, and always peeked around at stuff. That's pretty interesting. I'm gonna have to get that guy on the show. And it's one of those things where you never get to it. And then the other night, something happened. I got to talk to that guy, and I'm glad because I got questions and I got a really good feeling he's got answers. I'm talking about a guy who did his undergraduate work at Penn State. Then he moved on to Villanova, probably around the time when they stopped their football program. I'm thinking somewhere in the mid '80s.
Yeah, exactly.
And then he got a law degree there, and then he went on to Temple and got a medical degree. So this guy, he knows a little something about putting the work in and getting the job done. Dr. Sean O'Mara, how you doing, Doc?
Doing great, Vinny. Doing great. How are you?
How crazy is it that out of everything I remembered of Villanova around 1983, I'm going to guess, their football team, maybe 82, went defunct. Is that around the time or?
Yeah, no, it's right around that time. I like to remember that we had just won the national championship. In fact, that's why I decided to go to law school at Villanova because they had just become the national championship. So whether you remember good or bad, they both have the ability to improve and impact your memory. So yeah, just how you look at things.
No, we took a few guys from Villanova. I was playing football down at Tulane University, and we probably grabbed 2 or 3 of the guys because they were just out there on the loose, and these guys were great athletes, and came right over and were able to come in and really contribute right away. Sean, the thing that's interesting about you, I feel like I'm I feel like I'm on the front lines, right? Where I'm trying to get people back when you and I we're the same age. When we were kids, there was a girl, I'll never forget this, down at Ascension Catholic High School. She was a cheerleader, and she had maybe 3 or 4 pounds of junk in the trunk. I'm talking ripped abs, looked just as good as all the other cheerleaders, just a little wide on the backside. We called her the chunky chick. And by the way, we weren't being misogynistic. It was like she was the chunky chick. In today's world, she would be an Instagram model, right? She, ripped out abs, really good looking girl, chunky chick. Now today, you can weigh, Lizzo's weight, and you're lauded as a hero, right? And I'm okay with Lizzo, right? I get it, body positive, beep, boop. I don't care. What I can tell you about Lizzo is I can look at you and go, that young lady is not healthy, not even close. I'm not a doctor, I'm not an MD, but I can guarantee you her A1Cs are off the charts. I can guarantee you that she's got fatty liver disease, or she's headed there, depending on her age. I can guarantee you that her triglycerides are approaching 400. These are things I could guarantee you about a very young woman who's out there going, hey, you got to be body positive. I get it. We have a lot of morbidly obese kids out there, but this is not a good image. What say you, Doc?
No, I'm right with you. In fact, I was just telling my kids the other day that, I was remembering my experience living in the dorm at Penn State University, where, there were 80 guys that shared 2 floors, 40 in each floor. And there was only one guy that was heavy out of 80. Yeah. Today you go back there, it's probably the majority will be heavy. And it's a real problem. So I'm somebody who stands up and challenges this notion of fat shaming that people are running around saying, well, you can't say anything bad about obesity. I think it's really cruel to not, and to basically buy into this notion that fat shaming should calm the discussion and limit what we talk about. No, these people are in chronic disease. They're in a state of disease that's impairing their very existence and their quality of life. And it's far more cruel to adopt, in my opinion, an approach that allows people to perpetuate that or feel good about their bodies. Really, really destructive approach. So I, for one, as a physician, try to do the most I can to stamp out chronic disease, including trying to help patients that are overweight, that are obese, that are struggling with chronic disease, realize in an optimistic way that they don't have to live like that and they shouldn't be accepting it. So I'm right with you, Vinnie. You look fantastic. And you were one of the first people that I got to know actually through Twitter. And I was really attracted to your philosophy and your content because I think you and I share a similar philosophy that way. So yeah, right away, I thought, geez, if I could ever get on with any show, I'd like to do that. So a couple of years down the road, but hey,
we are.
things happen with, for a reason. The timing's worked out well so that we could do this today. So great to be.
You get tired of talking to Nina Teichels and Gary Taubes, and you go, oh, let's get this guy. We do. Whenever I look around at your stuff, I go, yeah, we do have similar philosophies, and this guy's doing good work, and I love when people have MD next to their name, so that always works for me. And to your point, we had 92 people in my senior class. I'm going to name the fat guy because he was also my best friend. Phil Callahan, 6 feet tall, 225 pounds. That was the fat guy back then, 225. 225 is now doctors are going, you're healthy, you're good to go.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We're moving. I was just yelling on my Monday show that I did the other day that I was watching one of these commercials because, as I was saying on that show, back in the 70s, when you would see a commercial on television, it was like, hey, most doctors recommend that you smoke Camel. It's the smoothest cigarette out there. By the way, you could get Torrington and you get the tar filter in there. And they had people smoking on cigarettes, yet we were healthier as a country when we had cigarettes. Now every ad is, hey, get Sky Rizzy. Sky Rizzy is going to make something, you're going to get 20 other problems with your Sky Rizzy, but this is going to go away. One of them was, I was watching one, and it was for one of the Lipitor type drugs. And they were talking about all the bad side effects that can and will happen. And then I went down the rabbit hole of looking at the drug, and the rate of it curing is not even there, right? The placebo almost had the same effect as the drug. And I went, okay, the FDA approved that. But then it went a step further, right? They were going, hey, if you take this drug, it will drop your A1Cs as low as 7. And I'm sitting there going, well, Jesus fucking Christ, this pill will leave you sick. Not only can you get 20 other things by taking the pill, including death, that was one of the side effects, death, but you're not even curing the problem. You're getting in the ballpark of cure. You're not even below the 5.6. I like to see people below 5, right?
Absolutely.
But they're not even getting people there. And then I started thinking, I was on my spinner watching that ad, and I said, boy, I can't wait to get Sean on the show because I want to ask him, because your whole thing is optimizing. It's not just about getting to that 7.0 and being kind of sick. You want to optimize people, right? What does that mean? Take me through it.
Yeah. So, in my humble opinion, optimization of health, biological optimization, is the most exciting frontier. We really have not explored it adequately. Way more interesting than the ocean, than space, as health optimization, and the notion that we can biologically optimize Homo sapiens to a new level is incredibly attractive to me. And it really was not anything I ever considered as a physician. As a conventional MD physician, I was trained just to treat disease. And, it really just was not a concept that we'd ever pursue and talk about. And the most we'd ever tolerate would probably be improving people. But I found it really boring. I was not at all interested. I was a disease-ridden physician myself. By the time I was 48, I had multiple medical conditions, severe gastroesophageal reflux disease, so severe I had a condition called Barrett's esophagus, which is metaplastic changes within your esophagus amounting to chronic, just shut this off, sorry, amounting to actually precancerous lesions. So I'd have to be scoped every 3 months. It was so severe. I was on multiple medications, high blood pressure. I was pre-diabetic. I had restless leg syndrome, kicked my legs all night long. I had eczema. I had obstructive sleep apnea. I had severe benign prostatic hypertrophy that would keep me up 4 or 5 times a night, having to pee in the middle of the night. And then I met a patient that challenged me just to cut out processed foods and persuaded me about the impact that would have. So didn't talk to me about disease. I thought he was like about 28. Turns out he was only 18. Wow. And so I stopped eating processed disease. And within 1 year, it wasn't placebo because I hadn't read anything that it would actually improve cutting out chronic disease. But in fact, all my medical conditions went away. And if it was just stopping my having to get up and pee 4 to 5 times a night, where previously it would just dribble out of me, I would have given up processed foods. But it was the fact that all these other medical conditions went away. And then I felt fantastic that I decided to go into researching for the National Science Foundation, the reversal of chronic disease, and how could this simple strategy of eliminating processed foods have such a dramatic impact on eliminating disease. And so over the years studying the elimination of chronic disease, one of the most interesting things that I found was, and this gives me great hope, Vinnie, is that as you eliminate chronic disease from the human body, something very interesting happens in humans. Their performance, their ability to perform across the board improves. So it was basically my insights and experience in eliminating chronic disease and increasing human performance, and the awareness, the profound awareness that people's quality of lives significantly improved to the extent that they eliminated chronic disease through lifestyle strategies, chiefly nutritional initially, that made me so interested in this notion of not just getting people healthy, but to get them optimally healthy. And maybe you can call me disordered, but let me speak to everybody right now who thinks that because I advocate a position of optimization, not just getting a little bit healthy, but getting as optimally healthy as possible, that why is that disordered thinking, but what you're doing, tolerating the disease, not disordered thinking? My quality of life is off the chart. I feel so much better. What I'm capable of doing now at the age of 58, almost 59, is just dramatically 3, 4, 5 standard deviations away from what my previous existence was. And you can't shut me up about it. I want to be able to share that with humanity. So I know a lot of people say, well, it's disordered thinking about eliminating bad food and good food and thinking that way. No, I think what it is that we just really haven't explored scientifically all the harm that comes from eating bad food. And so it's just a lack of awareness of the significant harmful deleterious effects that different foods have. So I stand for the notion of completely eliminating sugar, eliminating grains, and eliminating all processed foods, and only eating food in whole form. And I want to push back on anybody who thinks that that's disordered, invite them to give it a try and see the effects that has in their life, and then really see if they think it's so disordered.
Sean, give me just a snapshot, two snapshots. One, what year was this? How many years ago did you decide, did this 18-year-old come into your life and say this? And what did you give up? Because that's the audience is going, how bad was it? What was he eating? What was going on? People want to hear the actual foods. What type of junk, if you can really go back to that day, what did it look like?
I probably ate 3 to 4 nights a week pasta. So I was an Irishman. who is in love with pasta. And so I would regularly eat pasta with Sean O'Mara sauce. And so that was spaghetti with sugar and brown sugar that I would add to the spaghetti sauce to make it as sweet as possible. And that's what I was feeding myself and my family. And then I'd walk around the emergency room. I was a formerly trained emergency medicine doctor, drinking a gallon of skim milk, low fat, avoiding any kind of fat in my diet, and with chocolate Hershey powder in it, and gallons of orange juice. And I notice a lot of people today, unfortunately, kind of migrating towards this orange juice, and I really think it's a mistake. It's just processed sugar, and I was drinking gallons of it a week. So I slowly accumulated just multiple forms of disease, was miserable. And I actually, maybe I could show you a picture of Vinnie of myself. It's
Sure.
kind of interesting. So with your indulgence here, I'll try to see if I can screen share.
Absolutely, folks. If you guys want to see what Dr. O'Mara is showing, you can go to my YouTube channel. This podcast will be up, and he's sharing the screen and showing me some photos. Well, we'll see what he's showing me here in a second. Let's see what happens.
Yeah. So
Wow.
does that show up there?
Wow. Yeah. You don't look like the same,
Yeah.
if
So
you were
what's
a guy that was trying to hide from the law, you're not the same person.
Yeah, so this is me, and actually a lot of people, and maybe your subscribers, followers here will think that I'm actually heavy here, but the truth is I only weighed 165, and there I was age 48. But today I weigh 177. So it's not so much the weight you lose, but the tissue that you lose. So
Right.
I lost a particular type of tissue called visceral fat, and visceral fat is revealed in your face. You can actually see this, and it has an influence because it's so inflammatory. It gives your face and your body an inflammatory appearance and contributes to basically every form of chronic disease that we study for the National Science Foundation was improved or completely eradicated from people who lost visceral fat or eliminated visceral fat. So this is the difference in my face. And I like to show that because this guy did not have a good quality of life. And today, my quality of life is so much better. So it really started with that biomarker. And when we started a research for the National Science Foundation, my partner and I, Dr. CJ Zheng, who's an MD, PhD, and a much better formally trained researcher than myself, we purposed to look at biomarkers inside the body and on the body that would help us eradicate chronic disease. Okay. So for strategies to, once we identified this one biomarker that we first got started with, visceral fat, we asked ourselves, what would happen in nature? Let's look at just natural strategies, because if you look at the past 4 million years, nature has done a fantastic job of basically optimizing not only animals, but especially Homo sapiens. We did a great job when it came to nature. So we noticed that the animals today are a lot healthier relative to Homo sapiens. And we asked why, and basically came to the conclusion that it's because animals eat what they should eat. They don't eat what they shouldn't eat. And then they basically exercise in a very different way. They really don't exercise. They just live, and they have very intense encounters. So you don't see chronic exercise going on in animals. They do, however, have infrequent, very, very intense life and death kind of struggles, or they're sprinting to try to get away from an animal, or they're sprinting to try to catch an animal. So we thought, well, what would happen if we assessed human beings and followed this biomarker of visceral fat, just using those two principles that we could see were in existence for 4 million years? And lo and behold, what we found, Vinnie, was those were the best strategies for eliminating this heretofore underappreciated biomarker of visceral fat. So we would scan people using an MRI, and maybe I'll just take the time real quick to show you what visceral fat looks like for the sake of your audience, we would scan patients at, well, why is this not open? There it is. So we would scan patients through cross sections of their abdomen, and we ended up scanning close to 6,000 people. And we would look at this marker here painted in red. And
Right.
this is inside the abdomen. This is the belly button by way of orientation. This is your back. These are your love handles. And these are your back muscles. And this is the vertebral body, a part of your spine. So visceral fat is deep inside your abdomen. You can't possibly know how much you have without getting a scan accurately to assess it. And then the outside is what people are a lot more familiar with, subcutaneous fat. And we found when we could eliminate subcutaneous fat, it didn't really have much effect at all that we could determine to chronic disease. And so its accumulation really did not have much effect on chronic disease. But occasionally we would find people that accumulated subcutaneous fat. We could see that. But if they accumulated visceral fat, things went quickly south in a hurry. So visceral fat is able to be quantified by MRI and assessed. And you could see over the course of these 6 series of the same individual, he was 68 years old, Vinny, that he only did one thing. And what he did to go from this amount of visceral fat to dramatically eliminating that visceral fat to this small amount was he simply cut out processed foods.
Wow.
So that's how much of a benefit cutting out processed foods has within the body. And also just the opposite for the sake of those listening or who just saw that image. And if you're just listening, please go to Vinny's YouTube channel so you can see this.
It's pretty amazing. It really is. It's striking to see.
Yeah, and look at he goes from a blob here, 68. He is this kind of a typical 68-year-old, right, Vinny, that you would see walking down the mall.
Absolutely.
To now looking like a college athlete with a 6-pack. Yeah. And here's the interesting thing, Vinny, how much do you think he exercised a day?
I'm going to guess he didn't add any exercise, but usually what I've noticed that happens to people when they cut out processed foods and they start eating more optimally, they start to get more energetic and want to go out and do stuff. And I even start hearing from older guys, like they'll say, "Man, I don't know if you want to hear this, but I'm starting to have sex again." You know, things like that. You start hearing that from them, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you're exactly right. And it did not happen in this guy because as it turns out, he was CEO of a company, a very large company, very wealthy. And so for 35 weeks, which is the time difference between the first image and the last image, he didn't exercise 1 minute. So the point of these studies, and by the way, this guy, we argued with him. We really wanted him to exercise because he wasn't following the protocols, but we allowed him to get these series of 6 scans. So we made a mistake trying to get him to exercise because now we see the impact that processed foods have without the confounding factor of exercise. So to the best of my knowledge, this is the only existence of a series of MRI scans looking at this profound effect without exercise, just dietary. So it stands for the proposition for your followers here to see the importance of eating. So if you're going to exercise and you continue to eat poorly, eating sugar and eating grains and eating processed foods, you're really shoveling sand against the tide, and you're just not going to get the results that you're intended to get. So principally, it's step number 1 for me is to work with people that really want to become optimally healthy, to work initially on the dietary strategy. Step 1 is cutting out those processed foods.
Sean, I say it all the time. Every time I walk on stage, which over the past 2 years has not been a lot, you know, my words are exercise is a very, very poor way to lose weight. You know, in order to think that exercise is going to get you to lose weight, or if you think you're going to outrun a bad diet, means that you actually believe in CICO, calorie in, calorie out. And it's just CICO doesn't work, and exercising away a bad diet does not work. It never has. And I'm going to give you a quickie. You know, whenever I used to do these 500, 700 mile bicycle deals, out in California, we had a lot of 200 and 300 mile warm-up rides. These are sanctioned rides where people would get together, like out in the desert, and they, like a different company. There was one called the Eastern Sierra Double. There was another. There were doubles everywhere where you would go out and ride 200 miles, and these weren't just the athletes. These were other people who were just enthusiasts that wanted to go long. And this is early 90s, and I'm looking at, you start seeing the same people at the same events year in and year out. And you'll see the couple on the tandem bike that they're in good enough shape to go 200 miles, which means they're riding a bike every day of the year. They're doing somewhere between 15 and 20 hours of aerobics per week, just riding a bike. Think about that. If you went to an aerobic class and you did 3, that's 3 hours a week. These people are doing somewhere between 12, 15, 20 hours a week. And every year, those people would get fatter and fatter and fatter. And what they would tell me when I'd go out to these events, because I like talking to people, they would go, "Then can you imagine how fat I would be if I didn't do the exercise?" And I would always say to them, "You might even be thinner." And they would laugh it off. Right? It's like, look, I know what you think. You think, oh, because I'm doing this, I can have pizza. Oh, because I'm doing this, I can have beer. Oh, because I'm doing this, I can have a pint of ice cream every night to go along with my pizza and beer. And by the way, I understand there's a thing I can squirt in my mouth every 20 minutes while I'm riding called goo, which is high fructose corn syrup.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
That's so true.
Yeah.
So true.
And they would get fatter and fatter and fatter. The first thing people do when they run marathons, they go, okay, I'm going to get in shape. I'm going to run a marathon. They buy Runner's Magazine, page 1. You need power bars. Page 2, you need the Larabar. Page 3, you need goo. Page 4, you need Gatorade. Page 5, chocolate milk is actually a great recovery. You go through that and it becomes this cognitive dissonance because you go, oh, this is what the athletes are doing, but the athletes are not doing that. Right?
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. I have the same experience with people. They literally just exercise so they can eat. It's really a big problem. But I will show you in this image a duration exercise. Somebody who did a lot of running. Can you see that image there?
Yeah.
So this white here is the visceral fat in this individual who is the CEO of a company. And he was 58, so basically our age today, relatively. And this is a repeat scan, and we were disappointed that he had this persistence of visceral fat when we got him to cut out carbohydrates and cut out processed foods. We know from experience, having scanned thousands of people and really specializing in elimination of visceral fat, that this guy was an outlier, that he still had this. So it turns out when we questioned him whether he's following our recommended strategies, that he really wasn't in one area. And that was, he was running 10 miles a day, 5 days a week. So basically doing 50 miles a week. And so we finally convinced him if he was going to be a part of the National Science Foundation protocol in the study, he had to cut out duration exercise, and because we were looking at that, and substitute in sprinting for that. So he did it, and we rescanned him. He eliminated all jogging and just became a sprinter at age 58. And look at the dramatic reduction in the visceral fat from that one change, just doing high intensity exercise. So we would find and see time and time again that jogging.
I can't, Sean, I'm sorry. I can't read the 2 dates. How many?
So the date is February the 6th, 2007. Maybe if I expand that, you can see it better. Does that
there we go. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so
you February 6th, 2017.
2 months.
Yeah.
3rd. So 2 months.
Just a little bit under 2 months. So it did really have a significant change. And he actually got a 6-pack. In fact, I still remember the MRI tech come running into my office, so excited. Wow, you should see him. He's jacked now. He's got all these muscles. And when you sprint, it releases more myokines, these messaging molecules that get released from your lower extremity muscles, which you use predominantly, of course, in high intensity sprinting. And myokines, myokine, myokines get released, and they message to the rest of your body to cut fat and to build muscle. So that is a strategy that if more obese, overweight people understood, they should adopt it, as opposed to trying to go out and jog on treadmills or do ellipticals for an hour in some gym or their home, just simply getting them to sprint. But again, I only introduce sprinting once I get them to make the necessary dietary change instead of shoveling sand against the tide. Just imagine, and I could tell you image after image, people, how much they change when they stop eating processed foods. So no sugar, no grains, anything along those lines. And then just adopt high intensity exercise. They have this dramatic change. So I had to ask this guy, actually put him up against the wall, got my finger in his face and said, please don't confuse science. Do not tarnish science. You got to let me know, are you using steroids? Because
Really?
he had such a dramatic change. I couldn't explain it. But after this, back in 2017, we continued to look at it. We would see this repeatedly when we get people to stop doing long distance running or long distance cycling and just have them do high intensity exercise. So in my humble opinion, I think the two things that kept humans in the gene pool, contributing to the gene pool for 4 million years, were two forms of exercise. And it really wasn't exercise. It was two capabilities. How fast you could sprint to catch an animal or to evade an animal. And oftentimes it was another human that was trying to kill you.
Right.
And how well you could fight, how strong you were in being able to fight off a predator is trying to kill you, or how strong you were in actually subduing and killing a prey that you were trying to catch and eat. So those two things kept you in the gene pool, and most importantly for those listening, improved your quality of life. It dictated whether you were going to be successful. So I like to illustrate those two interventions for my clients that I work with to help them understand that. And so they change oftentimes their exercise strategy once they start working with me to stop doing duration exercise and to concentrate really on those fast twitch muscles rather than the slow twitch muscles. Because at the end of the day, Vinny, when you and I, in 30, 40, 50 years from now, when we're a little bit more older, it's how much muscle mass that we have that's going to allow us to get up and out of that chair unassisted. And if we concentrated our time on doing distance running or distance cycling or distance anything, we would be building those slow twitch muscles. And with that, it comes atrophy of your musculature. And it's a huge condition, a huge chronic disease afflicting people today is sarcopenia. So
let's go back a little bit. I don't want to brush over what you're saying right now because we talk about sarcopenia on the show a lot.
Okay.
I think he played for the Mets between 76 and 80. Then they kicked him back down to the minors. But sarcopenia is a real problem. And I talk to people about that all the time. And the example I always give is by the time you hit 35, it can start. By the time you hit 80, you can lose half of your body mass and muscle. My question is this: is there a world for guys like me? Let's use me as an example since I'm sitting here. I don't know if you could tell, but I have a rack right behind me. I don't miss doing my leg days twice a week.
Awesome.
I go to the gym. Also, I don't just do gym here in my office. I go out to the gym, and I do, pretty, short workouts. They're about an hour long, 45 minutes to an hour, but they're pretty, I get in there, I get at it, right? No one's looking at me thinking, oh, this guy's wasting away. Now I can tell, from a 230-pound football player that had a 30-inch waist at the time. By the way, I've never done any juice of any sort ever. And I want to talk to you about that also. Never felt that I had to. I came from a good, peasant stock of Italians where my muscles just built really well. I don't have any visceral fat to speak of. I'm still ripped at almost 60. But I do it all. I do the long distance stuff. I do the anaerobic stuff. I do not sprint anymore. I'm not opposed to sprinting. I'm just worried about at my age pulling a hamstring or pulling a calf muscle. And I still like to do a lot of mountaineering and that kind of thing. What would you suggest to a guy like me?
Yeah. So great suggestion. And I get that question a lot. A lot of people say, well, I'm interested in starting sprinting, but I'm afraid of pulling something. And people do pull things if they're not used to it. Like, we're not the fleet-footed deer that is, old and it's got its head down eating grass, and a wolf suddenly shows up and it can take off and go 0 to 100 in like a nanosecond. And the reason why we can't do that is a couple of reasons. One, we stopped sprinting. And two, we were filled with chronic disease. So you got a lot less disease, but you are challenged because you've simply lost the capacity to sprint because you haven't been doing it. So I would tell you, like I tell all my clients, get started, stand up at a started line, just accelerate slowly, over 10 seconds, just slowly accelerate to max effort. When you can slowly accelerate to max effort. Once you hit that after about 10 seconds, you're running as fast as you can. Hold it for maybe 3 or 4 seconds. And that's really all you have to do. You could jog a little bit to warm up, get your blood flowing a little bit. And just make sure that you're not starting with real cold muscles where you've been lying around and haven't loosened yourself up. So a little bit of jogging, but once you're warmed up, then just start slowly accelerating to max effort and hold it for, 1 or 2 seconds and then slow down, and then just gradually, exercise like that, do the same thing every other day and slowly increase your 1 or 2 to 4 second, max effort sprint to about 10 seconds. And that's what I like to get. And the reason why I say 10 seconds is at the point when glycogen is expended after max effort. And the other interesting thing, and let me just speak to you because you're a better athlete than I am. I was a dork in high school. So I was not a football player. I was a lanky, skinny cross-country runner for just a brief period of time. But I can think of no other sport that you get more short of breath in a shorter period of time, no other form of exercise that you get more short of breath and you expend more energy than a sprint. Think about it.
Listen, yeah. I mean, you don't make it D1 without, everyone thinks it's all about size. Even back in the early 80s, you had to be able to cover ground, right? And you had to cover that ground really fast. And I still think back to those sprinting days where, the amount of, we would work on the 10-yard sprint. We would work on 20-yard sprints. 40 yards was the gold standard for football players, but you would also have to work on your 100. And I can remember gassing myself on hundreds to where literally I couldn't see. Everything was just blurry in front of me. It's just that
good effort.
Yeah, we were out there doing it all the time. Now, let me ask you this, because the audience is wondering, how much, how often?
Yeah. So my answer, the best answer I can give is mix it up, because the model for our optimization, Vinny, was what nature would bring us, and nature would bring us changing circumstances. So sometimes that sprint was short, and sometimes it was long, and sometimes it was multiple times during the day, and other times we might go a month without sprinting. That would probably be pretty unusual. So I tell people variety. Nature favors variety, and variety optimizes humans. So basically, I tell people maybe sprint anywhere 1 to 2 times a day, maybe every other day switch to, maybe go a week without sprinting. Sometimes sprint 2 days or 1 or 2 sprints a day. Sometimes do 12 sprints a day, mix it up. And nature does not like these programmed, cycles where I used to before, when I was that 48-year-old guy, I was going to the gym, believe it or not, and I was exercising about an hour and a half in the gym. And that same guy that was that 18-year-old, this was a gym in a hospital. That same guy would come in and he'd do a workout and he'd be done in like 5 to 10 minutes. I thought he was getting paged out of the hospital. He was like a doctor or some tech or something that kept getting paged. No, he just did high intensity exercise and he would leave. And so it's basically, that's what I do. I mix it up, high intensity. And I have, done a nice job preserving my muscles. I continue to do an MRI on myself and my clients, looking at fat to muscle ratios. And it's been my experience in using this MRI, being able to quantify exactly the musculature and fat within clients' bodies and my body, that high intensity exercise contributes the most towards muscle mass and the elimination of visceral fat. So this image, can you see this
Sure.
image
Yeah.
here? So this guy's visceral fat is this little area here. This fat here is actually nephrogenic fat around the kidneys. So this is not, it's behind the retroperitoneal. It's not within the viscera, not within the abdomen. So his visceral fat was right here, and his whole GI tract, all his intestines were in this little area because he's so hyper efficient. And this is his musculature. He had the biggest muscles I'd ever seen inside a human being. He had a little tiny waist. Look at these enormous six-pack, and these oblique muscles look like eggplants. And this, by the way, Vinny, if you've never seen an MRI, this is his core. So this is his psoas muscle. And for your viewers, this is what, when you do a core workout, this is where you're working on. But this guy's core, and most people's core are below their vertebral bodies. This guy went way beyond that, and he's wall-to-wall muscle. So this was the single best MRI scan we saw of any human being. Now, contrasting that scan to this one here, this guy had a huge amount of visceral fat.
Wow.
His core was a lot more reduced, and he is more visceral fat than he is anything else. And this guy, sadly, when I opened up his scan after educating him about good scans and bad scans, this guy saw it and he passed out literally in front of me, hit the ground, knocked over two chairs. I thought he had a heart attack. And but he became so upset at the reality.
It's upsetting to look at. Sean, earlier we were, we went right past, like Lizzo, body positivity. But folks, this is what beautiful Lizzo looks like inside, right?
Yeah.
I'm looking at this and I'm shocked because I understand scans. I know, I'm glad that you're explaining this to the audience, but I understand. I've had every scan you could possibly do and what have you. And I get it. This is, I didn't even think what you're showing me was humanly possible.
Oh gosh. And he's not even the worst one. He's just one of them. But this is the guy with the really good scan, and see how tight his abdomen is. He's got this six pack, but look at his muscles, his arms, his pectoral, his pecs are fantastic. His shoulders. The interesting thing is that he gives me permission to use his images. So, cause he's really into health. He is, because he never lifted weights. He never did push-ups or pull-ups. This is fantastic, an interesting study. Yeah. So he never did anything to build up his muscles, but he did do one thing, and that was he was an Olympic sprinter. He was a sprinter in high school, a sprinter in college, became an Olympic sprinter, and that's all he ever did. And it built up his fantastic body. So sprinting really has that ability to build your muscles. And Vinny, I see it in guys our age. We really get them, like the guy, the 58-year-old that became jacked once he started sprinting. So I want to challenge you, Vinny. I'd love to see you become a sprinter. Try for 6 months, give up the distance running, and or even 3 months, and see, this guy, my guy did it in less than 2 months. He had those changes. So give it a try and see. You've been doing duration exercise your whole life.
Well, Sean, I still do. I will, and we could talk off the air as to how much and how often you want me to do it, but you can't see it, but right behind that red post on that rack, there's there's three, I can see at least 3 jump ropes hanging there, and they're all speed ropes. And on any given day, because I'm at this desk, if I'm not, moving around, I'm at this desk. Like I said, I like doing my long distance stuff and all that. I'll just grab a rope and go right outside my door here. And I'll warm up for a minute, just skip for a minute. And then I'll just start doing double unders, and just get myself, it wakes me up. It's like I have springs in my legs again. It's a completely different thing. So I do some of it. It's not like I'm completely against doing any of it, right? It happens, but maybe I could start with doing that more. I do go to the local track. There's a high school near me and a university near me, and I'm at the track. I can easily start working them into my exercise routine at the track. So we'll talk about what that is, and we'll go from there. But let's carry on here.
Yeah, so I'll make the same point. I have these. I work out of my home. I have in my family room, between our kitchen and our family room, hanging from our 20-foot ceilings, gym rings. So I hit these, do some high intensity, very, very challenging maneuvers in a very short period of time. And that's me using my rings this year. And so, despite being, 58 years old, I'm in good shape. I've got good musculature, and I continue to build muscle. So I do these high intensity exercise. And I love the fact that you keep your speed rings right near you, because if you have your gym equipment in a garage, you have it in a downstairs room, you're not going to use it as much unless you do what Vinnie does and I do. Have it in your life. Nature would challenge us. We'd be walking around, boom, we'd be attacked by a lion, we'd be attacked by a bear, we'd be attacked by wolves, be attacked by other humans. You have to be ready to exercise, and has to be high intensity exercise integrated in your life. And this notion of going to gyms to go work out for an hour and a half around a certain schedule is contrary to what nature uses, spontaneously integrated exercise in our lives. So get your equipment, get your stuff around you. And I remember my wife, thinking she would never allow me to do this, but now she uses it, and all of my kids use exercises. So kudos on you for figuring that out.
No, you have to trip, Sean. You have to trip over the stuff. I always say that if you're not tripping over it, you're not doing it. And I'm a big believer in that. Whereas I'll see the rope and I'll go, okay, and then just grab the rope, and I got a few minutes. I just learned something a while back. About 2 weeks ago, I've talked about this on the show before. I was using my I have a really nice watch that I had for a lot of years, and I use it for everything. My plastic watch broke. So I told my wife, I said, go on to the Amazon or wherever you go, and I need a watch. It's got to have the world's biggest face on it so I can see it without my glasses. And it's got to have a dial. I don't want digital. So she came, can you see this thing?
Oh, yeah.
It's the biggest watch. It looks like Flavor Flav of a watch, right? So it's like I have a clock. And I noticed there's a little screen at the bottom, and that screen has a number in it. Now, this watch has a lot of buttons, and I don't like to touch buttons too much because you don't know what's going to happen, right? So there was a number there, and I was so interested in knowing what that number was that I read the little thing that came with it, and it said, oh, that's the steps. It automatically, so past couple of years, everyone said 10,000 steps a day, 10,000 steps a day. So I've always wondered how many steps I do in a day, right? So the first day I learned about these steps, I come in, I'm like, I get 22,000 steps. I was thinking, can this be right? And oh yeah, I went for a hike today. I did 2 phone calls. When I do phone calls, I walk out my front door, I put the things in, I talk to people for an hour. If I do 2 of them, that's 2 hours of walking. I'm the guy. And I'm like, what's with this 10,000 steps? I seem to get somewhere between 18 and 25,000 steps every day. And then my buddy tells me, he goes, you realize you're walking at least 10 miles a day in steps, right? And I'm thinking, well, that's better than sitting around. If I was out on the Serengeti, I would be walking around. I'd be getting some sunshine, some fresh air, and, all the good stuff. And I didn't realize, as a matter of fact, what I started doing now, when I go out to go jogging or whatever, I'll take it off because I don't want to have too many steps, right? Yesterday, I didn't do any exercise. I just took the day off. And I'm sorry, except for I did squats, leg press, but I didn't do any aerobic exercise. And last night I took the watch off, and it had 17,000 steps. And I started thinking to myself, wait, you sat at your desk most of the day? You did deadlifts, that's no steps. You did squats, That's no, you did leg press. Where did you get these steps? Where did these steps come in? And I went, oh, I was walking around with this guy who's they're doing our yard. Okay, maybe I picked up some steps there. Oh yeah, and then I went to the grocery store and I walked. Oh yeah, and then I went to Lowe's and I walked around Lowe's. And then I came home and the kids were playing pickup basketball in the cul-de-sac. And I went, oh man, I got to get in on that. I need to play me some basketball. I said, guys, feed me. I'm hungry. And I played for an hour and a half. Didn't even realize it was an hour and a half. When you do that, you're picking up steps. You're picking up steps. On a day when I thought I did nothing, 17,000 steps, right? And people are always telling me, oh, I struggle to get 5,000 a day. It's like, man, you need to get out. You need to get out and you need to get moving. We're not meant to be that guy. What say you, Doc?
No, I completely agree. And I think, that's something that we're all biologically adapted to, Homo sapiens. I like to use the example when it comes to walking, getting steps in. That's your idle speed. That's where a car functions the best. All the maintenance happens the best. It just is optimal existence. So when you walk, you actually increase your blood flow at the ideal weight, perfusing tissue. So I always have my clients go out and walk, increase the amount of walking that they do, because most of them are not living the lifestyle that you are, Vinny. They're more challenged. They typically have been sitting down. And so when you get them walking, it improves that blood flow. And that's why if oftentimes people have problems, they say, I'm going to go for a walk if you got a problem. And what happens is why it helps you to think clearer is because you've improved that blood flow, that set speed, that idle speed is better. And now you're improving blood flow to your brain, and it helps you come up with solutions and problems. And you just feel better. So yeah, man, I'm all about walking. And every day I walk, I try to challenge people whenever I have phone calls, just like you. When I have VTCs, I take my phone and I use VTCs when I'm walking outside to get my steps in, or if I can't get outside because I live in Minneapolis and it's snowing and it's inclement weather and it'll mess up my phone, then I walk through hallways and buildings to get my steps in. And so, yeah, I'm a big believer, man. Absolutely. It's sprinting and walking and fighting are my two. If you want to call it walking exercise, I call it a lifestyle strategy, but you could think of it as exercise, and it just optimizes you. So if you're not walking, you're not optimizing your health, not optimizing your body.
I want to switch gears a little bit here, if you don't mind. And I hope I'm not
Sure.
throwing a monkey wrench into it for you. As we get older, the telomeres get shorter and shorter and shorter, and then we die, right? Is there, we're talking about optimizing health here. I want to get into that. How do we, besides sprinting, we've talked, and by the way, Sean, I hope you like what's going on here, because I'm going to invite you back on again and again, because I feel like we haven't even scratched the surface today. What else can we do to optimize? I want to know what we're doing wrong. Is there any way that we can fight, old man time? Can we fight the telomeres? Can we reverse any of that?
Yeah. So let me show you this picture, because a picture is worth 10,000 words. So do you see this young man's image? How long do you think that is? I'm going to tell you a strategy. How long do you think the time period is from this face here to this one here? How long of a time period?
He lost a lot of fat under his chin and what have you. I'm going to say that's got, well, and I'm going to cut it shorter because you're doing this shit in short time. I'm going to say that's at least 3 months.
Okay. So some big changes in here. His eyes are pretty narrow. Look how wide open these are. And I'm going to tell you exactly why his eyes became wide open. Basically, it comes down to improved mitochondria. And you're going to be surprised, but between this picture and this photograph of these two photographs, 7 days. So now in your mind is, what in the Hades did this guy do that he proved himself that much in 7 days, that he got that much better look? And what he did was better describe what he didn't do. What he didn't do was he didn't eat. So nature would have, for 4 million years, periodically from time to time, deprived us of the ability to eat, not by choice, but it just would have happened.
Right.
So as a consequence of fasting, this guy actually improved his physiology. And that's what we found out. As you fast, you actually improve yourself through a type of protein called a chaperone protein. So these chaperone proteins travel throughout the body, and when protein is made, it helps the protein to be made more, or I should say, in a more error-free manner, so that there's not as much disease. So besides improving your mitochondria, it actually reduces the amount of disease and improves the ability of tissue to be repaired and restored and produced in a much better manner. So one of the strategies I like to promote with health optimization is a practice slow, because if you start too fast and too much at once, similar to sprinting, you may end up with some disappointment and then give up on this fantastic intervention. So start very, very slowly fasting and increase the period of time you fast. You'll increase these heat shock proteins that get produced and optimize your body. And so as a practice for myself, every week now I fast presently. It's taken me years. I've been fasting for about 8 years, but just in the past 5 to 6 months, I've moved to extended fasting. And now I fast for at least 3 days, if not 4 days out of the week, I will fast. So for this month, this past month of February, I fasted for more days than I actually ate. And what we find when you do that is you preserve muscle mass through fasting. So it has an ability to help you fight medical frailty and sarcopenia. So yeah, I love fasting. I think
Anyway, Sean, all right, take me through it. We've talked to a lot of people. Look, I'm one of the first guys to bring Dr. Jason Fung on this show almost 10 years ago, and he started talking about fasting and intermittent fasting and everything else. Take us through it. You fasted more days in February than you actually ate food. How does it look for you? Wake me up. You wake up in the morning you've eaten the night before. You wake up the next morning and go.
And so when I get up, I will have, I like to have a little non-chlorinated water, because I don't want chlorine going and disrupting my microbiome. And I like to infuse a little bit of non-caloric apple cider vinegar or coconut vinegar, basically, maybe 1 calorie, if not even, probably not even a calorie. I'll put about a tablespoon and 25 ounces. And then I'll sip on that bottle of water during the day. And since I have adopted using microbially infused, rich, naturally fermented probiotic foods into a little bit of water, or de minimis, I am benefiting myself by the introduction of those microbes. So I eat them for the microbial advantage, not their caloric advantage or their food or nutritional advantage. But I leverage microbes, our allies. Most people are afraid of germs. They're germ freaks. And I'm a germ freak in the opposite way. I love germs. So I'm constantly trying to get more rich, diverse microbes in my body. So I drink a little bit of probiotic naturally made. I do not take supplemental probiotics. I do not take any capsules. I think they're a waste of money. And so I just drink that. I drink black coffee. I will not drink anything caloric in content. So no cream, no oil, no MCT oil, no ghee, no butter, because those are all caloric. I make my body do the work by getting energy extracted from fat reserves. So it forces my body to go after any residual visceral fat that I have. And that's all I drink is natural spring water, well water, with a little bit of maybe kimchi juice, sauerkraut juice, apple cider vinegar, coconut vinegar, just a little bit of that. And then one tip I will share with you, and I will say I haven't quite figured this all out, is I do consume, at least for my first 1 or 2 nights, a couple of natural sleep supplements. And so I'll consume a little bit of L-theanine and a little bit of apigenin. And I have noticed that when I fast, I'm not entirely sure exactly why it happens, but I have a harder time initiating sleep and staying asleep. It appears to lower my threshold for waking up. And so when I take these sleep supplements, and credit to Dr. Huberman, who is with, he goes on Twitter and Instagram at Huberman Labs I think he's from Stanford University. He's one that talks about these supplements along with a little magnesium. I sleep a lot better. So I take those in my first 2 nights of the extended fasting, and then I don't need them anymore. Once I get into day 3 and day 4, I don't need those. I seem to be sleeping fine, but it's just initially that I have that. Now I may eventually not have to take those at all, but those probably add maybe 5 or 10 calories. That's
I don't think that breaks a fast.
Yeah.
Let me ask about, you mentioned the kimchi and taking other acids. Does that somehow create, we can't take any kind of nitric oxides or whatever, but does it create nitric oxide in your body to help form energy, or how does that work?
Yeah, so good. Yeah. So it's one of my favorite topics, subject matters, is nitric oxide. So basically, we don't know, to answer your question. The microbiome is still such a big black box, Vinny. We have not really mapped out. It's the second phase of the Human Genome Project, is actually to genetically map now the constellation of microbes that reside within the human microbiome. So your body is made up of about 10,000 trillion, 10 trillion human cells. And the microbiome is probably on the order of 30 to maybe as much as 50 or 60 trillion organisms. So we're more other organisms than, in fact, we are ourselves or cells. The microbiome, when you add fermented foods to your microbiome, you're enriching the diversity of those the species of microbes within you. So I think they work in ways that we don't completely understand. But you are correct. One of the first places, if we introduce microbes within our mouth and we optimize, is that the production of nitric oxide, which regulates our blood pressure and our cardiovascular health, begins in our mouth when we eat nitrates in the form of natural nitrates from meats. And they're also present in some vegetables, such as beets, are rich in nitrates. They convert from nitrates to nitrites in the mouth through microbes. And here's something really interesting. I think you will find interesting, your readers, if you don't know this. If you consume alcohol-based mouthwashes, or any mouthwash,
you cut out the nitrates. I tell people, they'll go, "How can I get more nitric oxide?" And I go, "Well, you can stop brushing your teeth and using any kind of oral care." And
exactly, because 20 minutes after you do that, your blood pressure is increased. If once you do that, your blood pressure goes up, because you diminish your nitric oxide. So right away, your oral microbiome is incredibly important. You want a really, really powerfully diverse amount of microbes in your mouth. If you do that, you will not have halitosis, no bad breath. Your gums will not bleed. I tell people I could drop a 10-penny nail between my teeth and I'm not going to bleed. My gums are so resilient from the rich microbes. I practice pulling, which is I put kimchi juice and I put rich omega-3 rich ghee in my mouth with about a quarter teaspoon of highly mineralized pink Himalayan salt or Redmond's real salt, and I swish that around for about 45 minutes a day. Now, some people only do 15, 20 minutes. It's a good Lord, I don't have time to do it. Well, you actually do, because there's 45 minutes where you don't have to talk, and so that's when I put that in there, along with some other, like maybe apple cider vinegar. So I have a whole slurry of microbes rich in my mouth, and so my dental health is extraordinary. My oral pharyngeal health is fantastic. So it's a wonderful practice, and I think microbes play a huge role in our health and our ability to produce, because of course it's other microbes down in your stomach that contribute to your capacity to further convert nitrites into nitric oxide. And then a very interesting, I don't think you'll be able to see it, but in these cameras, because the resolution is not frames per second isn't high enough, but I literally have visible pulses in 17 spots in my body.
Oh, wow.
So my pulses are visible. They're not just, in the emergency medicine, we're trained to feel for a pulse. What we should be is you should be able to look for a pulse, but we can't see pulses in a human being because never in the history of humanity have we been so diseased as we are today.
Right.
But human beings should have visible pulses throughout their body. So as we get rid of visceral fat, and I get rid of it in my clients, these pulses become visible throughout the body. And it's a wonderful achievement that I just throw out there for your audience to be aware of, and get them to practice optimization of health, and they'll have visible pulses.
Sean, one more thing. I'm going to let you go in just a few minutes, but we have to come back and do a part 2, and I think a part 3, because we really didn't even scratch the surface today. You told me what you don't eat. Now give us an idea of what you do eat.
Yeah.
Daily basis.
So what I like to eat is a lot of grass-fed beef, and I like to eat wild-caught fish, wild-caught seafood. But one of the interesting strategies, just because I enjoyed so much and it feels so good, that I will share with you, is that when I break my 4-day fast, so for instance, last night I went to 96 hours, and I went to my favorite restaurant, and my favorite restaurant really is a type of restaurant. What I like to do is I predominantly eat carnivore. I eat only meat, and I eat fermented vegetables. I do not eat any vegetables that aren't fermented. So I bring in jars of fermented vegetables. Yeah, I'm kind of a weirdo, but that restaurant doesn't mind, because I'm eating less steak if I'm eating, bringing in my own vegetables. They have a salad bar and I will not touch it. But I will go and I'll eat at one of these churrascarias, a Brazilian steakhouse, and those guys that come around, those steaks of meat, I will eat an ungodly amount of meat. I mean, friends will go out and meet with me, and the amount of meat I eat, they're looking at me like, they just cannot believe they're giving such faces how much meat I'm eating. But that's what I'll do. And I'll eat a little fermented vegetables with each mouth and mouth bite full of meat. And if you got diseased gums and you're bleeding and you're chewing meat, you're infusing all these nasty microbes, into that meat, and it goes down in your gut. And what we're finding out, a lot of these cancers, gastrointestinal carcinomas, are beginning from the pathogenic microbes that are in dental gum disease, and they're spreading throughout the body. So flip that around, get your gums super healthy, and eat fermented vegetables with these rich microbes that, as you're chewing the meat, you're putting these rich microbes in that now get infused within this chewed up mastication of food that allows to go into your gut. And it's a whole new approach. And that's part of my optimization strategy, is to make sure I always eat fermented vegetables. I have some fermented apple cider vinegar, can't be pasteurized, it has to be with the mother on it. And I also drink kefir, and I eat fermented cheeses like blue cheeses and raw cheeses, and those are principally my strategies and what I do eat.
Our diets are very similar. I got to be honest, I don't do a lot with the fermented vegetables. I always say I'm going to get to it, but I never do. I never do. And it's the one big downfall with me. I will have kimchi. I love kimchi. I love really, I grew up in Cajun land, so I love really spicy things, and kimchi is one of those things. So, maybe I'll add more of that to my diet. But yeah, same thing. People look at me and go, "What are you doing? What are you eating?" Because at 59 years old, I just started taking my first medication, and I'm not quite sure how long I'm going to be on it. I started taking it about 2 months ago, 5 milligrams of Cialis, because I was waking up during the night a lot, right? And, I've started hearing, oh, blood flow, you got to get, and my doctor prescribed me. I said, hey, I read, and can you give me this? And she said, absolutely. And I would love to go off of that. I'm not willing to get any of those surgeries done where they go in and ream it out and do all this kind of stuff. But I would like to get off of that. And if you have any suggestion as to how I can get that back and go off of that one drug that I'm finally on, I would take suggestions.
Are you taking it for prosthetic hypertrophy, where you're having to get up and pee?
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to be gross here. I still have zero problems with sex whatsoever. Um, no, I'm sure I'm Italian, so it might have something to do with it. But the only thing I was talking to my buddy, we were hiking. We go up to Whitney every summer, and he was talking. He was like, "Yeah, man, we noticed we were in the same hotel room. He would get up, I would hear him walking across the room. It's like, well, he's up. I might as well go pee now." And then, all night long, it was like a path back and forth between two old dudes. He's exactly my age. We're about a month apart. And we started talking. It's like, yeah, man, 3 or 4 times a night. And I feel like I'm getting less sleep. I'm not getting quality sleep anymore because of this one problem. Right.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to go take, this Flonase and there's this and that and all these commercials. And I read somewhere where if you take a small amount of Cialis, it actually works. So I went, oh, what the hell? I went to my doctor, give me 30 days. After day 8, I was sleeping all the way through the night.
Well,
Right?
it will help, and it's an exogenous source of something. But what I challenge my clients to do is I try to get them off all their medicines, say, whatever your medicine that you're prescribed for, we're going to figure out your body to do the same thing without that medication. So I will give you some strategies off air to do, but I'll tell you, sex is not gross. Sex is a wonderful thing. And for the males in the audience and for females who have male partners, you want a real firm erection. But here's something that you really should have. When you get visible pulses, I will tell you that you not only will get a very firm erection, but you'll get erection that will do this. It will beat with your heart. And
Right.
if you're watching right now and you're a male and you don't have an erection that is doing this, is because you are diseased and you have atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease. When you were 16 and 17, Vinny, that football player, that's what that would do. But you lose it because you get atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease. And if you optimize your health, you will get that back. Visible pulses allow that to happen. So it's a strategy of eliminating. I've never seen it happen one time, visible pulses or, a pulsating erection in anybody who does any consistent durational exercise. So durational exercise creates these reactive oxygen species. And I really believe that you can exercise. It's probably a lower threshold for causing those and problematic. So sprinters do not have problems with erectile functionality and don't have problems waking up in the middle of the night to have to pee. I now go to the bathroom where it used to fall and dribble out of me. I now go to the bathroom and I do not use urinals. I use toilets to blast away in the public so they can see this gray-haired guy.
Yeah, still
like Niagara Falls when I pee, and I pee faster than most guys in their 20s and 30s. I get the job done. Very, very efficient. And I am so grateful to have that because it would take me forever to pee before because it wasn't shooting out. It was basically falling, kind of dribbling out.
Yeah, gravity took effect. Yeah.
Yeah, it just takes a long time. But so one of the interesting factors I use or metrics for health is how long it takes for you to have a bowel movement and how long it takes for you to empty your bladder and whether you're able to sleep through the night comfortably without having to wake up. So yeah, health optimization brings that, allows you to return to a more youthful existence where you're able to have these kind of things. So I'm glad you brought up the sex factor. I don't think sex is gross at all. It's a wonderful part of our existence.
People get weird about it and the whole thing. And by the way, like I said, no problem. And I'm not saying that for the effect. Everyone knows that on this show. I've been over 2,000 shows. I'm completely honest with everything I talk about.
Yeah, me too.
And there you have it. I have nothing to hide here. Just no problem whatsoever. Except for that one thing. And if you can help me off the air, I would appreciate it. That would be great.
Yeah, I will do that. And I will challenge anybody that's using medicines to think about working with somebody who really optimizes their health and gets them off those medications. Because your capacity to urinate the levels that you want are not going to be achieved as long as you're taking that medication. It becomes, a placation that prevents you from growing in areas that you got to grow. And it's medicine's fault. I mean, we just don't teach people what they have to do because we haven't really looked at this new special. As far as I'm aware, I'm the only physician in the world that specializes in health and performance optimization. One day, I hope there's residency programs in it, and that lots of physicians are desiring, and that most people become health and performance optimizing physician. What a different world we live in, Vinny, if we had that. And so I love working with health coaches and say, you know what, it's all natural stuff. You don't got to go to medical school for this. And, for those that, are currently health coaches and trainers, if they could just find these natural strategies and be able to track it and educate their clients, they'll have much better results than if they just kind of concentrate on just exercising. So, there's a lot of information out there, and I love to share health and performance optimizing strategies to get more people interested in health optimization and performance optimization. Lots of things that you can do. And I hope that we can attract more money for research and funding to support research to look at
Good luck with that, brother.
I know it's a big problem.
Good luck.
That's a show right there, isn't it? We could just talk about the hindrances to research and why they just won't go into it.
They won't do it because there's no money in it. The Thai shows and I get together and we'll just talk about, are we just fighting a losing battle, or what are we doing here? And Sean, hang on. I want to say goodbye to you off the air and talk to you about how I can get off of this one drug that I hate the fact that I have a prescription. It drives me nuts. Folks, Villa Cappelli is the longest running sponsor of this show. I usually do this ad a little earlier in the show, but I couldn't get enough of Dr. O'Mara. So here we are at the end. Villa Cappelli olive oil, the best olive oil on the planet. There is no seed oils mixed in. In the great old US of A, you could call it 100% pure olive oil and have 40% seed oil in the product. That is a no-go. You want the good stuff? Villa Cappelli, longest running sponsor of this show. I think they've been with us for 9 years. You go there, you get your olive oil, you get your herbs, you get everything. Put in promo code Vinnie, V-I-N-N-I-E, to save 10%. Promo code Vinnie, V-I-N-N-I-E, 10% savings every single time at Villa Cappelli. Let them know we sent you. Don't put the wimpy Y on Vinnie or it won't go through. And you go, oh, they didn't give me my discount. No, you want the discount. V-I-N-N-I-E. Also, before you go to Amazon, please go to VinnieTortorich.com. Click through the banner. Puts a little coal on the fire. Gets my train down the track. And we're able to keep this show free for well over 10 years. So go do that. We also have the Superfan page. You can go to VinnieTortorich.com and check that out. You can find Dr. Sean O'Mara. Sean, tell them where they can find you. I don't have any notes.
Yeah, I'm at MedCon Wellness, MEDCONWELLNESS.com, or at Dr. Sean O'Mara on Twitter and Instagram.
Go check him out. This guy is a wealth of knowledge. I've really enjoyed having him on today. On behalf of Dr. Sean O'Mara, my name is Vinnie Tortorich. Put life into living and do it with enthusiasm.